But whatever it was, Kerry Bate is one of the few people that I've ever always trusted. I could talk to him, I would get his feedback, I would have information and insight that I didn't have before, and it would make things move forward.
And Kerry was always stayed relaxed, and he was a cool customer when it came to working with people. So he had those skills were part of his repertoire.
He never wavered in his focus. His focus was really always on what's best for those we serve.
And he was a leader in the community to get things done. And I think what makes Kerry special is that he works with other people to get things done. It's not just him. It's a lot of other people involved, the community involved, neighbors involved to get things done in the community.
Yeah, he always puts everybody first, and I think that's a great quality. That is a mark of a great leader. A good leader always puts everybody else first, and he recognizes outstanding achievement. And when you got problems with employees or other issues, he tackles that too. He's got a lot of inward courage that doesn't necessarily show on the outside. Well, it's true. He has a lot of inward courage that doesn't necessarily show on the outside. He doesn't dress fancifully. He doesn't wear a lot of ties, and he'll show up as Kerry Bate. And so what you see is what you get. And when you know about him and know what he can do, it's simply amazing.
Well, I think I probably met Kerry before I got involved in housing advocacy. He was a community activist, and I was doing other kinds of community work in the early 80s. So I probably met him sometime early, mid-80s. And then I worked for Utah Issues, and that's where I first wound up doing collaborative work with Kerry, when he was, at that time, the director of the Division of Housing and Community Development for the state.
Kerry and I met when we were both working for the Community Action Program, the Salt Lake Community Action Program. And I was working in what they called the main office, and he was in charge of the Central City Community Council office. And we had council offices in all of the poverty target areas across the valley.
My first memory of him was at a conference, and this was probably back in 96, 97, where they were talking about how to better serve the homeless population. And he facilitated one of the sessions that became quite heated. And he just did such a kind, he made sure everybody had their say, and was really good about getting us, audience comments and feedback. And he just handled a very difficult situation with a lot of strength and poise.
Actually, I heard about Kerry before I met him, because in the late 80s, about 87, 88, I worked for Commercial Security Bank before it became Key Bank. And I was working with the community councils. And I don't know if people remember in 87, 88, right in that area, Central City, People's Freeway, all those neighborhoods had a lot of boarded up homes, especially in Central City area. And that, was Kerry's area.
I met Jack, I was introduced to him at the Alta Club in 2001. And he said, "Would you like to come and join me in the Crusade for the Homeless?" He said, "I don't have an executive director. Would you be glad to fill that role?" And I said, "Of course." He says, "Well, the pay is zero. It's a volunteer job." I said, "Okay." Well, Jack knew that Kerry Bate was newly installed as the director of the County Housing Authority. And I didn't know Kerry at the time, so I called up and I said, may I speak with Mr. Bate? And he said yes, and so I spoke with Kerry, and I said, would you like to join Jack Gallivan and I for lunch at the Alta Club? And he said, of course. And you know, from then it went on, and we developed a strong relationship, and I've known Kerry worked closely with him for, well, since 2001. And I found him to be a very interesting person in terms of his priorities. And his priorities was always housing first, and that fit in with what his job was. And so as we continued to develop various programs and other housing projects, he was always a part of them, whether he was a funder or just a supporter or whatever. He was always there. And I counted him to be a very close friend and a colleague of unmeasurable proportion.
While he was with the Housing Authority, he worked on Grace Mary Manor, which is 84 units for chronically homeless. Kelly Benson, 59 units for chronically homeless. And Bud Bailey, which is 136 units. All of those units were really designed to stretch to serve folks who wouldn't be served well on the market.
Well, I think his ability to work with a wide variety of people. He was able to work with private foundations. He was able to work with government agencies, state and federal agencies. You know, a lot of people can't do that. He was able to communicate with all those groups in a way of putting funding together and priorities for housing. I mean, we look at where we're sitting today in the Bud Bailey apartments. This is a testament to his belief and his efforts.
He was played that critical role of building the beginning of what has now become a well-established niche in government.
He was really the same person in his job. I mean, it was sort of like he's not a different guy at home than he is at work. He's that way all the time. He's been a very generous and humanitarian person.
I mean, Kerry Bate is not only a friend, he's a champion for the underdog. I think that's what places him first among all other things. He champions the underdog. Those who don't have housing, those are poor people who need a lift up, and those people who need to get to the next level in their life. And it doesn't matter what their nationality is, whether they're immigrants or people who are just living here or people who are down and out. He is the champion of the underdog, and that's what I'd classify him as.
Even if he gets mad, you know, he doesn't really show it. I don't know if you've been around him. I mean, I can tell he's a little upset with me on certain issues we were talking about, but he always seems to keep kind of neutral. And
sometimes he was absolutely wrong, just flat wrong. I could give you several examples of that, but he would listen to you, and he would say, that's not the practical, reasonable approach to things. That won't work, and you're giving in. You're being too nice to everybody. You have to be more direct on this. And he would pause. He wouldn't always agree with you, and then you would see something happen in the next day or week or whatever, and the approach had changed, and he had become maybe more direct or more muscular in how he wanted to put things together. And he was very smart about that. Sometimes we were wrong, not very often, but sometimes we were wrong. And he would have that, but it was always the thing about Kerry was that he's a very bright man. He was always willing to communicate. He was always supportive of your position, even if he thought you weren't quite right. And we would work things together.
you work with people and you're doing something for somebody else, and it's easier to do it when you're helping somebody that needs help. And I think that's what one of the greatest things I learned from Kerry. So you work together, and when you're doing something for somebody else, it's a lot easier to do that, especially somebody that needs help.
He's not a flashy guy. He didn't come in with a guy that you'd recognize in a crowd. but if you work with him, you find out how incredibly bright and how incredibly collaborative he is. To work with state governments, some of the people up there always don't get along, you know.
I really learned about kindness. He's a very kind man, but that doesn't mean that that he wasn't strong and strategic and at times shrewd.
You have people in life, and you have a certain number of people, your family, that you care about. Some of your family you could care less about. Some of your family you love and really want to see every day. And the same with people that you work with. Some people you work with, you just know from the first encounter that this is going to be a good thing. And then there are others that not quite so much, or not at all, but you work with them because they're who they are. But with Kerry Bate, you always wanted to be involved if Kerry was involved.
You know, when we go to the Alta Club, Jack would always say, now you got to wear a tie to go to the Alta Club. And so we invited Kerry down there for a meeting with Jack and myself and Kerry. So Kerry wouldn't wear a tie, so he just walked in there, and it was okay. But he was kind of sticking out amongst the other people with stuffy manners and ties and everything. But it was okay. He didn't particularly like wearing ties, and that was all right because you knew he was such a quality person, and deep down he had the structure and the ability and the character to bring people together. That was his forte, I think, was bringing funders and other people together for a common cause, and this is certainly an example of that.
Kerry, I would like to thank you for all the work that you have done. You certainly have laid a foundation out for our community right from the beginning with your work at the state and Only Walker Housing Trust Fund, the Blue Ribbon Campaign, House Bill 295, the state tax credits. You did so much work in the earlier days. We have been, unfortunately, not as productive after you left office, and I feel like the tide is changing and we need to get back on. You certainly have been an advocate for the underdog and taken on extremely hard projects. So from the bottom of my heart and from the coalition, we thank you.
Yeah. Hi Kerry, congratulations. Thanks for all you've done for housing in Utah. You are a true gem, and I hope you have a great retirement.
Kerry, we're glad that you did what you did and that there's so much to talk about in terms of what was achieved. We really miss working with you. We think it's a little bit sad that you gave up so soon. We thought you were going to work into your late 80s or 90s to, really make things better. And you got things going, and I guess it's okay that you wanted to go home and study your family genealogy, but there's so much more work to do, and the rest of us are stuck with it, and you're not there. I guess it's okay, Kerry, but we miss you.
Well, it'd be the same message that my boss told me when I retired from the military. Go find another job. He's not done yet. Find him another volunteer job. And that's what I've been doing for the last 25 years.
Just that I'm really grateful for you. I think you've been a great asset to the community you live in and the state and everybody. And I know you're going to do more things, and because you're not the type of person that just sits back. You're always doing something. I think what I've also learned from you is that I want to keep doing what I'm doing as long as I can, just like you'll keep doing what you're doing as long as you can. And I appreciate all your efforts, and you've changed a lot of people's lives, and all for the better.
One of the things I like to do is I like to think of the housing authorities, their programs and activities as a tapestry. And the tapestry is made up of the the lives that we kind of intercede with. He's leaving that tapestry with a much more vibrant, stronger weave. And I thank him for the opportunity that I have to continue to work there and all of the housing we have.